The cursor was blinking on the laptop screen like a heart racing, keeping time with my uneven breathing. My nephew Tyler stopped typing, his eyes fixed on the monitor. A heavy silence filled the room as I watched his expression change subtly. Raised eyebrows, a brief blink, and then him turning the chair toward me. "T.O. Jamie, are you gay?" The question I had spent decades avoiding slipped from the lips of a 21-year-old who had only come over to use my computer for a college assignment. I had never cleared my search history. One simple, human mistake had just shattered the carefully built fortress where I had hidden my true identity for 45 years. My name is James, a respected accountant in our small town where everyone knows each other by their first name and judges only by what they can see, or what they think they know. My routine is predictable. The office, occasional gym sessions, lonely dinners, and in the absolute privacy of my apartment, my only connection to who I really am. Anonymous forums and websites about relationships between men. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. On Sundays, I rarely get visitors. My apartment on the third floor of a low-key building is my sanctuary, with walls decorated with photographs of landscapes I visited alone, books organized by color, forming a rainbow that only I recognize as symbolic, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee made to exact measures. That afternoon, though, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Tyler arrived with his easy smile and contagious energy, a backpack slung carelessly over his shoulder, and an explanation about his broken laptop. "I need to finish a paper, Uncle. Can I use your laptop for a few hours?" I agreed without hesitation. After all, he was my favorite nephew. As I made more coffee, he was already typing furiously. That's when I realized I had forgotten to close the browser tabs. "Yeah," I finally replied, feeling the weight of the word escape after being held in for so long. "I am." I waited for the discomfort, the judgment, the disappointment. Instead, Tyler closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. "Cool. I thought it might be, but I never wanted to push you." The casual tone in his voice was so unexpected that I felt momentarily off balance. "Why have you never told anyone?" The coffee was cooling in my hands as I tried to shape decades of fear into a coherent response. I explained about growing up in the 80s, about the stares at school, about the comments my dad made during family dinners. I talked about building an acceptable persona, about forced relationships with wonderful women who deserved someone who could love them completely. I spoke of the constant fear of being discovered and losing everything: respect, career, family. "But it's 2024, Uncle Jamie. Nobody cares about that anymore," Tyler said with the simplicity of someone who grew up in a world completely different from mine. "In your circle, maybe. In mine." I left the sentence unfinished, the weight of decades of self-restraint clear in my silence. Something changed in the room during that conversation. As the hours passed, I felt layers of protection dissolve. Tyler listened with genuine attention as I shared fragments of my true life. That brief relationship during college that ended because of fear. The rare and discreet encounters over the years. The persistent loneliness of living only half a life. "You know what's the hardest part?" I confessed, looking out the window at the darkening sky. "It isn't exactly the fear of rejection. It's the habit of hiding. It becomes part of you, like breathing. After so long, I don't know if I can live any other way." Tyler placed his hand on my shoulder, a simple gesture that triggered an inner tremor I fought hard to control. That human touch, laden with acceptance, was a feeling I had almost forgotten. "You'll never know if you don't try," he said, his youth radiating a wisdom that left me speechless. The aroma of the tea I made filled the space between us, creating a strangely intimate atmosphere in a room that had never witnessed such an honest conversation. Tyler shifted on the couch and moved a little closer. The space between us seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. "Have you ever really fallen in love, Uncle? With someone who loved you back?" The question hit me like a punch in the stomach. So many years of denial had buried those memories under layers of protection. "Once," I whispered, my voice lower than I intended. "In my first year of college. His name was David." The memories came in vivid flashes. Messy brown hair tossed by the wind. Green eyes that seemed to change shade with the light. Shared laughter on the campus stairs. I recounted how we met in the library, both studying for the same calculus exam. How our conversations lasted until dawn, and the first time our fingers accidentally brushed as we reached for the same book. "It was like discovering a new color," I explained, surprised by my own eloquence. Something that had always been in the world, but I'd never been able to see before. Tyler looked at me with a gaze that was disconcertingly intense. I couldn't read his expression. It wasn't pity or mere superficial curiosity. It was something deeper, more present. What happened to him? We got found out, not publicly, but enough. I panicked, denied everything. I said he had misunderstood our friendship. My voice trailed off. I never forgot the look on his face. It was like I'd erased his existence with a few words. The silence that followed was different from the ones before. It wasn't heavy with tension, but filled with understanding. Tyler got up abruptly and walked to the window, watching the night now completely take over the city. "You know, I never told the family, but I'm bisexual too," he revealed without warning. "I found out in high school. It was never a big drama for me, but I also never found the right moment to say it." I studied his profile outlined against the window. The same determined chin as my sister's, but a posture entirely his own, confident in a way I never was. A wave of pride mixed with melancholy washed over me. "That's why I always felt connected to you," he continued. "Even if you weren't consciously aware, I've always felt like we shared something." I got up as well, driven by a force I couldn't name. I stood by his side, looking at the same city lights, suddenly seeing them with a different clarity. "Keeping that secret changes the way you see the world," I murmured. "It's like you're always watching from behind a glass, never really part of it." Tyler turned to me. The closeness between us created an electric tension I had never experienced with a family member. Something was shifting in our dynamic. Something I couldn't, or maybe didn't want to name. "It doesn't have to be this way," he replied, his voice taking on a deeper, almost hypnotic tone. "You deserve to live fully, Uncle Jamie." It was hard to tell who moved first. Maybe we both leaned in at the same time, drawn by a gravitational force we couldn't resist. His lips met mine with a surprising tenderness, contrasting with the intensity in his eyes. The kiss lasted only seconds, but it was enough to shatter the world I knew completely. I suddenly pulled away, stunned by the collision of desire and shock, by the unexpected pleasure and the sudden realization of what had just happened. "Tyler, I stuttered, my hands visibly trembling. "This isn't... We are... family," he finished, without taking his eyes off me. "I know. I'm sorry if I crossed a line, but I don't regret it." I backed away to the other side of the room, trying to gather my thoughts amid the chaos. "This is... complicated. We're relatives. I'm a lot older. There are so many reasons why this is... wrong," he offered, a shadow of defiance in his voice. "How was it wrong for you to hide your whole life? How was it wrong to deny who you are out of fear of what others would think?" His words hit me like stones, each one striking a painfully precise mark. I ran my hands over my face, trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. "It's not the same thing," I protested, though lacking conviction. "It isn't," Tyler said. He moved slowly closer, closing the distance I had created. "I'm just saying you've spent your whole life letting other people's rules dictate your happiness. How about for once finding out what you really want?" What I wanted. Such a simple but deeply complex question. I had thought so much about what I couldn't have that I could scarcely articulate what I desired. And now, confronted with an unexpected, forbidden desire, I felt more lost than ever. "I don't know what I want," I admitted at last. "I only know I don't want to hurt you, or compromise what we have." Tyler smiled, a gesture lighting up his face in a way that reminded me of him as a child, running in my parents' garden. "How did we get here? From that innocent place to this moment loaded with adult tension. How about we take it really slow then?" he suggested, sitting back on the couch and patting the space next to him. "Just talking. No expectations or pressure." Reluctantly, I sat down, keeping a safe distance. We talked for hours, about our experiences, past relationships, lost dreams. Gradually, the initial tension gave way to a different kind of intimacy, deeper and less urgent. At some point during the early hours, after several cups of tea and confidences I'd never shared with anyone, I realized that Tyler had fallen asleep on the couch. His peaceful face in sleep looked so young, painfully reminding me of the age difference between us. I covered him with a blanket and left for my room, where sleep stubbornly eluded me. I replayed every moment from the night, every word exchanged, every meaningful look. There was an undeniable connection between us, yet barriers that seemed impossible to overcome. Family, age, social conventions. Everything that had held me captive all my life was still there, only now with a new twist. The next morning, the aroma of coffee drew me into the kitchen. Tyler was already there, stirring the pots around as if he owned the place. "Hope you like scrambled eggs," he said, smiling casually as if the night before had never happened. "I thought we could talk more. About us." That word hung between us, loaded with meaning. Us. Such a simple word, yet so revolutionary for me. Tyler, about last night, I started, carefully choosing my words. What happened was unexpected, he finished, setting a plate of steaming eggs in front of me. But it wasn't a mistake, at least not for me. He sat down in front of me, his eyes looking straight at mine with disarming frankness. There was a courage in him that I deeply envied, the ability to confront his desires without shame or hesitation. For me, it wasn't either, I finally admitted. And that scares me more than anything else. Why? He asked simply, though the answer was anything but simple. Because all my life I set clear limits. I hid who I am, yes, but I always respected certain boundaries. What I feel for you defies everything I believed was right. Tyler reached across the table, his fingers lightly brushing against mine. Sometimes the limits we set are just walls that keep us from truly living out our lives. There was a wisdom in his words that went far beyond his years. Or maybe it was just the clarity of someone who hadn't carried decades of self-denial. And what if we end up hurting each other? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if this destroys not only whatever we might have, but also what we already share? Every real connection comes with risk, he replied, interlacing his fingers with mine in a way that made my heart race. The question is, does the chance of happiness outweigh the possibility of pain? I looked down at our hands joined together on the kitchen table, his young and strong, mine just beginning to show the signs of age. It was a contrast that symbolized every reason we should stop right there. And yet, I'm not sure I can answer that right now, I confessed. I need time. Tyler nodded, not letting go of my hand. Time is something I can give. I'm not asking for a definitive decision, Uncle Jamie. Just a chance to explore what we feel, without any external or internal judgment. The proposal hovered between us like both a promise and a challenge. The coffee was cooling in our cups while the silence lingered. I can try, I finally said, surprised by my own courage. But we need to take it slow. Really slow. The smile that lit up Tyler's face made every bit of anxiety worth it. We finished breakfast, talking about lighter topics, as if we needed a break from all that emotional intensity. But something fundamental had shifted between us. Later that afternoon, as we watched an 80s classic on the couch, a movie Tyler had never seen before, the distance between us slowly diminished. Our shoulders brushed against each other, a seemingly casual closeness charged with a world of unspoken intentions. When his hand found mine once more, I didn't pull away. This time the kiss was different. Not a shocking revelation, but a deliberate exploration. His lips tasted of coffee and possibilities, and his youth was evident in the urgency with which he pulled me closer. I allowed myself to respond with a passion I had not felt in decades, maybe ever. Our breathing quickened as our hands explored new territories, crossing boundaries of fabric and convention. The feel of his skin under my fingers was electrifying, firm, warm, inviting. Every touch awakened parts of me that had lain dormant for so long I almost forgot they existed. "Are you sure?" I whispered against his neck, giving us one last chance to pull back. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," he replied, guiding my hands to unbutton his shirt. What started on the couch continued in my bedroom, where the afternoon light created golden patterns on his bare skin. There was a reverence in his touch, as if each inch of my body were sacred ground waiting to be discovered. I responded with equal devotion, tracing every line and curve of him. There was no shame between us, only discovery. Every sigh, every moan, every moment of shared pleasure was an affirmation of desire, connection, and possibility. For a few hours, the outside world ceased to exist. We were no longer uncle and nephew, two men separated by age and circumstance. We were just two souls finding comfort and ecstasy in one another. Later, lying among rumpled sheets, the weight of reality began to seep in again. Tyler was drawing invisible patterns on my chest with his fingertips, his touch now soft as a breeze. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "About how everything changed in less than 24 hours, I replied honestly. Yesterday morning, I was a man trapped in a life of denial. Now, I trailed off, unable to define exactly what now was. Tyler rested his elbow on the couch and watched me intently. Regretful? The question was fair, but the answer surprised me with its clarity. No. Scared, confused, worried about the future, yes, but not regretful. His smile warmed the room more than the sunlight peeking through the curtains. Neither am I. Not at all. I pulled him closer, marveling at how naturally our bodies fit together. There was something deeply liberating about allowing myself this moment of genuine connection, without filters or barriers. "So, what do we do now?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had begun to form in my mind. "How do we navigate this, whatever it is?" Tyler sighed and nestled against my chest. "One day at a time, I guess. We don't need to have all the answers right now." The simplicity of his approach was refreshing. After decades of planning every aspect of my life to hide who I really was, the idea of simply living in the moment felt revolutionary. "And what about family and the world out there?" The questions tumbled out before I could even contain them. "The world outside can wait," he replied, gently kissing my shoulder. "As for family, we'll deal with that when it's necessary. Together. Together." That word echoed inside me like a promise. I had spent so long living in isolation, convinced that my desires were incompatible with genuine connection. And now, in the most unexpected circumstances, I had found someone willing to face the world by my side. "You know what surprises me the most?" I said, running my hand through his hair. "It's not what we did, but how I feel now. Complete. Like a part of me that had been asleep finally woke up." Tyler raised his face to look at me, his eyes sparkling with understanding. "That's how it should always be. No shame, no fear. Just two people truly connecting." At that moment, I felt decades of guilt and self-censorship begin to fade. Not completely. I knew there would be internal and external struggles ahead, but enough to glimpse a future different from what I'd always known. "Thank you," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "For what?" "For helping me find a part of me I thought was lost forever." We fell asleep like that, entwined in an intimacy that went beyond the physical, a soul connection that defied categories and conventions. For the first time in decades, I wasn't dreaming of secrets or fear. I was only dreaming of possibilities. The Sunday melted into Monday with a disarming naturalness. I woke up before the alarm, as usual, but this time there was a comforting weight by my side. Tyler was sleeping deeply, one arm thrown over my chest, his eyelids flickering slightly as if in a dream I could only imagine. I watched him for a few minutes, the slow rhythm of his breathing helping me process the enormity of what had happened between us. I had to go to the office, keep up appearances, continue the life I had so meticulously built. But something had fundamentally changed inside me. It was as if after years of swimming against the current, I had finally allowed the river to carry me, discovering that I wouldn't drown, as I had always feared. I got up carefully so as not to wake him, and made some coffee. In the kitchen, while I watched the coffee machine work, flashes of last night invaded my mind. Touches, whispered words, discoveries. Sensations I had never thought I could feel again, much less with this intensity. And beneath it all, one lingering question. What were we going to do from here? "Good morning?" Tyler's sleepy voice surprised me. He was standing at the kitchen door wearing nothing but the sweatpants he'd tossed on the floor in his room. His messy hair and the faint blush on his cheeks stirred a tenderness in me that caught me off guard. "Good morning," I replied, offering him a cup of coffee. "Did you sleep well?" He smiled as he accepted the drink, better than I have in a long time. We sat in silence for a few moments, sipping our coffee, the air between us thick with unspoken words. Finally, it was Tyler who broke the silence. "I have to go back to my apartment today. I have class at 2. Reality crept into the bubble we'd created. Tyler was a college student with responsibilities, friends, an entire life ahead of him. I was a middle-aged accountant with a meticulously compartmentalized existence. Our worlds could not have been more different. "Of course," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "I also have to go to the office. I have meetings all day." Another silence settled in, heavier than before. The question hung between us, almost tangible. Was it just one night? An isolated episode born of emotional confessions and unexpected closeness? "Jamie," he said, using my first name for the first time instead of uncle. "I don't want this to end here." The simplicity of his statement contrasted with the complexity of what it entailed. I set my coffee cup in the sink, trying to find the right words. "Tyler, what happened between us was extraordinary. I won't deny that. But it was also complicated," he offered, a slight smile on his lips. "Forbidden, unconventional, all of that and more," I agreed, unable to hide a smile at his insight. "The world won't understand. I'm not even sure I do." Tyler placed his cup next to mine and moved closer, letting go of the distance I had so carefully maintained between us. His hands found their way to my face, gentle, yet firm. "I'm not asking us to announce it to the world. I'm not saying we have all the answers. I just know that I found something with you that I've never experienced before, and I'm not ready to let it go." The sincerity in his eyes was disarming. In that moment, the age difference between us seemed irrelevant. He had an emotional clarity that had eluded me for decades. "So what exactly do you suggest?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. "Time," he replied simply. "Time to explore what we feel, away from prying eyes. To find out whether this is just a moment or something lasting." That proposal hung between us, loaded with implications. Time meant secret meetings, shared secrets, a life split between appearances and reality. Exactly what I had been doing all these years, only now with a new variable in the mix. "I don't want you to live the way I did," I confessed. "Hidden, always fearing being found out. You deserve more than that." Tyler shook his head, determination burning in his eyes. "I'm not asking us to live in the shadows forever. Just for now, while we figure out what this means for us. And it won't be like your old life, because we won't be alone. We'll have each other." His logic was persuasive, though fear still lingered. It wasn't just fear of judgment from the outside, but of the consequences for him. Tyler had an entire life ahead, infinite possibilities. And what about me? What could I offer beyond complications and limitations? And what if this is just a phase for you? I voiced my deepest fear. What if one day you realize you've wasted your time on someone who— "Don't do that," he interrupted, his fingers pressing softly against my lips. "Don't decide for me what I'll feel or not in the future. I'm an adult, Jamie. I can make my own choices." Eyes wide open, the firmness in his voice took me by surprise. There was a maturity in him that transcended his years, a security in his desires that I had never known, even now, decades older than him. "All right," I finally conceded. "We can try. One day at a time." The smile that lit up his face made every bit of uncertainty in my chest worth it. Tyler pulled me into a kiss that sealed our unspoken agreement, a pact of mutual discovery with no guarantees beyond the present moment. We only broke apart when the clock on the wall reminded me that the outside world kept turning, indifferent to the revolution unfolding inside my apartment. "I have to get ready for work," I murmured against his lips. "And I have to go home before class," he replied reluctantly. We moved through the morning like a synchronized dance, sharing the bathroom, exchanging smiles as we got ready to return to our separate lives. There was a surprising domesticity in the situation, as if we had done it 100 times before. At the door, with his backpack on and ready to leave, Tyler hesitated. "Can I call you later?" That simple, everyday question carried a tremendous weight. It was the first step in building something new, something that might exist outside the walls of my apartment. "I'd like that," I replied, surprised at how easily I admitted it. We exchanged one last brief kiss, heavy with unspoken promises. Then he left, heading down the stairs with the characteristic energy of youth, leaving me alone with thoughts that swung between exhilaration and dread. At the office, that day felt like a stage on which I performed the most convincing role of my career. I smiled at colleagues, discussed spreadsheets and forecasts, attended meetings, all while harboring inside me a secret that turned every interaction surreal. My phone buzzed several times throughout the day, messages from Tyler that I read in secret like a teenager, pictures from his campus, comments about boring professors, and among them, phrases that made my heart race. "Thinking of you. I can't wait to see you again." "Last night changed everything," I replied cautiously, still uncertain of how to navigate this new connection. Part of me feared that every word written would create a permanent record of something that perhaps should remain ephemeral, shielded by the transient nature of shared moments. But as the day progressed, I felt my resistance fade. There was an intoxicating freedom in allowing myself this small pleasure. Swapping trivial messages loaded with subtext, the anticipation of another meeting, the feeling of being desired precisely for who I am, without masks or pretense. That evening, once again alone in my apartment, the promised phone call came through. Tyler's voice over the line carried an intimacy that bridged the digital distance. "How was your day?" he asked, the simplicity of his question contrasting with the complexity of what we shared. "Surreal," I answered honestly, "like performing in a play where I'm the only one who got to change the script." His laugh resonated warmly over the line. "I know exactly what you mean. I sat in my comparative literature class watching everyone around me, thinking, you have no idea what happened to me this weekend. We talked for hours, bouncing between trivial topics and deep subjects, exploring new territories of compatibility beyond the physical attraction that had brought us together." His views on books I'd read decades ago were refreshing, My comments on historical events he'd only studied in theory added a dimension he loved. It was as if our age and experience differences, rather than dividing us, created a perfect balance of complementary perspectives. "When can I see you again?" he finally asked in a lower, more intimate tone. That question unleashed a wave of possibilities in my mind. Not just the anticipated pleasure of his company, but also the logistical risks. My apartment was a safe space, but frequent meetings might spark curiosity among the neighbors. Public places carried the risk of people seeing us together and asking difficult questions. "I'm free on Saturday," I suggested, opting for caution. "Maybe we could, I don't know, do something outside the apartment? Like a date?" The hopeful tone in his voice was palpable. "Yeah," I confirmed, the word giving the situation an oddly definitive twist. A date. We planned to go to a movie in another part of town, followed by dinner at a discreet restaurant neither of us had tried before. The excitement in his voice as we said goodbye was contagious, sparking in me an anticipation I hadn't felt since my youth. After hanging up, I sat alone in the dim living room, contemplating the unexpected turn my life had taken. Less than a week ago, I was a man resigned to living in the shadows, happy with scraps of authenticity I'd allowed myself in private moments. Now, for the first time in decades, I saw the possibility of something more. Not a life lived entirely in the open, perhaps, but an existence shared with someone who truly saw me. I still feared judgment, of course. I feared rejection from family and the inevitable complications. But for the first time, that fear didn't feel paralyzing. It was balanced by something more potent. The recent taste of genuine connection. The emotional freedom I had experienced in Tyler's arms. I opened the window, letting the night air fill the room. The city stretched out below, dotted with lights. Thousands of lives, each with its own secrets and struggles, each in search of meaning and connection. For so long, I had felt separate from that vibrant tapestry, forever an observer and never truly a participant. Maybe it was time to change that, not with grand gestures or public proclamations, but with small steps toward honesty. A movie date, a sincere message, a shared moment of vulnerability. Looking up at the partially visible stars beyond the buildings, a sense of peace settled over me. Not the resignation I'd mistaken for acceptance for so many years, but a genuine calm born from knowing that, for the first time, I was choosing my path instead of merely reacting to imposed limitations. The future with Tyler was unclear. We might find that our intense connection wouldn't last against the scrutiny of time or external pressures. Or against all odds, we might build something enduring on the fringes of social convention. Whatever the outcome, one thing was certain as I went to bed that night. The brief time we'd spent together had already changed me irrevocably. It showed me that it's never too late to discover new parts of yourself, to take a risk on authenticity, and to allow yourself the vulnerability needed for a real connection. And that, I discovered, was more than enough for now. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this.